Hello and welcome to the home of all things BTCC. It is again race week, so come around so quickly. This time, obviously Brands hatch this weekend. But first, I will do my review on Snetterton. Going to go back to the old format. I'm going to go for every driver, kind of give a little talk about each of them. Hopefully, not too long on each. I'm not probably going to do a preview of Brands, although I might talk about each driver as I go along through them. But what I'm going to add in at the end is my 5 drivers to watch at the weekend. The 5 drivers who I think going into Brands should be the ones to watch. So let's get into this and have a look what I thought of each driver from the weekend. So starting off with the WSR BMWs. Basically, I've got my little book here that I've been making my notes in. When I do my reviews, I'm probably going to end up talking about the same driver in the same order, just the way I've made my notes. But let's get straight into it and look at Colin Turkington, who qualified on pole. Of course, he actually qualified second. We'll get on to Gordon shedding and his penalty a bit later on. So he went ahead of race one with a fastest lap, second in race 2, and 7th in race 3. BMW look a lot quicker. So Snetterton, I wouldn't say is traditionally a rear-wheel drive track, but in particular, the BMW seem to be getting a lot better there in the last few years. So Colin had a very good weekend there, and that's got him up to 3rd in the championship now. I think he's only 5 points off the leader. Tom Oliphant qualified 9th, finished 8th, 6th, and 16th. Just wasn't. He's not quite on the pace of Turkington most of the time, unfortunately. But really did seem to be a little bit off Turkington. Turkington had a really good weekend, and Oliphant was quite ordinary, really. And then Jelly, who had a much improved weekend from Thruxton, qualified 4th and finished 4th, 7th, and 5th, getting him into 7th in the championship. I did think at the start of the season, I know Thruxton was a bit of a strange weekend. It wasn't what I quite expect from Jelly and the BMW. But now, this weekend, I think you see Jelly far better on the pace, where I would expect him to be driving that. Now he's got real drive experience, been with WSR before. So I think it's a lot closer to the pace of what we expect from Jelly. But although I do think soon he will be getting podiums, and he does need to get podiums to be backing up Turkington. But overall, BMW's far quicker this weekend. I realise I keep saying this weekend to see last weekend now, because obviously this weekend will be Brands. But moving on, going to look at the leads and tools Infinity now. Of course, our champion Ash Sutton only qualified 15th. Didn't have an engine issue, unfortunately, so didn't get into that top 10. But he had a P11 in race 1, so didn't really pick up many places there. Race 2, but he had no weight on the car, super quick. Got from 11th and won the race, got fastest lap. And race 2, even with full weight, finished second. They got into quite a few places from people going off track and things like that. But Infinity just looks so rapid, especially in the hands of Ash. He just manages to pick up places so easily that the other 2 Infinities aren't doing. But that has put him top of the championship. Look at Aidan Moffat. He looks a little bit better in that Infinity than he did last year, I think. But it wasn't a great weekend, unfortunately, for him. Only qualified 20th. I got a 14th, a 10th, and a 17th. Only 17th in the championship. I'd expect a little bit more from Aidan. I think he's got his head around that Infinity a bit more. I said unfortunately race 2, I think he had the penalty. I think he finished 7th originally, and race 3 was actually 10th until the last lap when he went off. So it would have looked a lot better from that, but unfortunately that just wasn't what it turned out to be. And Carl Baldy, someone I expected to do a lot better in Infinity. I thought after his one season in BMW last season, the rear-wheel drive experience under him there, going to that Infinity would be a big step up. But it doesn't look like it's worked so well for him, unfortunately. Qualified 22nd and then qualified finished 20th in race 1, 17th race 2, and a DNF in race 3. I think he went off in the first. I think he was pushed off. Only 4 points in the championship in total now from the first 2 rounds. Just kind of hasn't really gelled for him, and you can see that in the Jack Sears trophy. Isn't anywhere near the front like he was last season for him, unfortunately. Moving on to Toyota Gazoo Racing UK, or Speedworks in the Toyotas. So Roy Butcher had a solid weekend, qualified 3rd, and then got a 3rd place, a 5th place, and a 6th place. Gets him to 6th in the championship now. Much more like the weekend expected from Rory. Had obviously a poor weekend at Thruxton, as he went off in race 2. But it was more on the pace what you'd expect. I just wondered whether that was the right move for Rory moving to Toyota, because he was so good in the Ford last year. But proving there that he obviously has got a lot of pace in the Toyota. I expect even more from him this weekend. And Sam Smell just isn't on the level of Rory. Qualified 23rd and finished 29th, 26th, and DNF in the last race. He's only scored 2 points from the opening 2 rounds now, compared to Rory's 47. Just need to see a lot more come from Sam in that Toyota. That is, I'm not sure if I think it's a car that can win the championship, but it's a car that will be battling at the front, can get podiums easy, race wins. We've seen that with Tom in the past, and obviously Rory got a podium last weekend. Sam just needs to pick it up a little bit. I'm not sure if he's not used to the car, what it is, but he does need to be picking it up and catching up to Rory. And now moving on to the Hyundai, the Accelerate Hyundai is probably driver of the weekend. Tom Ingram qualified second, finished second in race 1, finished 4th in race 2, and won race 3. I've got him second in the championship, 2 points behind championship leader Ash Sutton now, and I think that's just phenomenal. I know we know how good Tom Ingram really is, and he's a great driver, but he's really dragging that Hyundai. I thought he would pick it up a bit higher than what it was doing last season, but to be doing that a first, the second, and the fourth all on the same weekend. Add that onto the second, he had at Thruxton as well, going to Brands, a track he normally goes well at as well. He's clearly just found something from that Hyundai that they haven't found before. Hopefully the other drivers can pick up on what that is and pull it forwards. But obviously Tom, I'm not sure if that is the hand they're getting better or that Tom's pure talent on that, but he's doing something that the others aren't doing. Chris Smiley, very kind of average weekend, got 3 points scoring finishes. He qualified P11, finished P10, P13 and P11. He's only 18th in the championship with 15 points compared to Tom's 78. So he's the closest to Tom, but obviously he's already had a season in the car as well. So if Tom can do that, you'd be expecting Chris to be a little bit closer to him up there. And the other drivers, Jack Butel is qualified P25, finished P26, P22 and P21. That's just not good enough, I don't think. I know it's only a second season championship, and he'll be banking the points with Jack Sears as he did last season, getting them finishes. But he needs to be constantly battling for them points now, even if it's only battling for 15th place. He needs to be, I think, in a second season in a car that Tom Ingram's got second in the championship. Hasn't scored any points yet so far this season, and his best finish is a P19, so he's not even really close to the point. I think he just needs to up it a little bit more to catch up to that. And then we've got Rick Poffert, who qualified P26 and had 2 P24s and a P27. I think he had an incident in race 2 where he made contact with Glenn Geddy. We'll move on to later, and it's bad luck, unfortunately. No points for him yet so far either. But this is his first season in any type of touring cars, completely different to what he's used to in GT, so you let him away for a little bit, same way we'll do Jack last season. But I just think Jack needs to up it a little bit, but I think Rick started well. I think he'll be looking to push forward a little bit more, which is higher so far, the P16 in the last race at Thruxton. But you just see Tom Ingram's here, you kind of got Chris Smiley somewhere here, and then Jack and Rick are down there. I mean, Rick, you kind of expect it was first season, but if you say Smiley's maybe here, kind of want Jack to be getting on right on the edge of them points, maybe around P15, sniffing around there, picking up a point or two, at least a weekend, but still hasn't got anything so far. Next, look at the Team Dynamics Honda. So Gordon Shedden qualified P28, but of course he won. He qualified on pole to begin with, but then was disqualified for an infringement onto the angle of his rear wing. Got disqualified qualifying, unfortunately. We did get from P28 up to P15 in race 1, which was good. I think got himself a point, and you think get himself up there in race 2, but he only then gained 4 more places to P11. Bit of a surprise that I think people on the soft tyres, whenever they use that, made a big difference to their weekend. And then race 3, then Gordon did manage to grab places, got up to P3 and pick up the fastest lap in that as well. So that shows Gordon's pace. So obviously we know he's a quick driver, but he's just had a few incidents. He's still only 10th in the championship now. Slightly better weekend than he had at Thruxton, but we'll be expecting him to go a little bit quicker, I think. And then Dan Robot, unfortunately, had a few struggles. Did get 3 points scoring finishes, qualified P10, finished P13, P15 and P10. Won all 3 races as for the Jack Sears though, which I think is probably his main aim. But that wasn't quite as a successful weekend for him as it was at Thruxton. I think all the Hondas for some reason struggled. I'm not sure why, because we got to BTC later on as well, and they didn't have as good a weekend as they did at Thruxton. But yeah, it just wasn't quite right. Shedden took his time to get up to grid, and kind of Rowbottom kind of just sat around there, the kind of between P10 and P15, that kind of battle, and didn't really push any further forward. Moving on to the car gods with Sicily Motorsport BMWs now. Okay, they didn't have a great weekend at Thruxton. Tom Shelton's troubles followed him to Snetterton now. He only picked up P12, which didn't seem too bad, but fell all the way back to P21 in race 1, didn't finish race 2, and it was only P19 in race 3. He doesn't seem to have got to hold with that BMW, unfortunately. There's been a few issues, he's been bumped off a few times, the BMWs, but he just doesn't seem to have a hold of that. Tom's a great driver, and whether it was the real world driver or a different car, what it is, but he just doesn't seem to be on top of that, unfortunately. And look at Adam Morgan, who had a much better weekend, who qualified P5 and finished P6 and a couple of P8s to get up to 11th in the championships. It was a much better weekend for Adam compared to what he had at Thruxton. So he does look quick in the BMW, who he has the pace Tom doesn't quite seem to have, and thankfully he kept out of any trouble at Snetterton, which helped him get forwards. So I think Adam's only going to get stronger as the season goes on. Okay, he has had experience of rear-wheel drive before, but it's been a while because he's been in that Mercedes for some time now. But I think it's a good weekend for Adam Morgan, and I will only see him go further forward as the season goes on. Next up, the Adrian Fuchs with Power Max Racing Vauxhalls. They went pretty well at Thruxton. Jason Plato had a great weekend. That was P3 in the championship at the end of it, but then kind of had a disaster at Snetterton. Only qualified P18, we thought it was the weight. Moved up to P17, that was it in race 1. Got rid of that weight for race 2, so you're thinking maybe he'll push forward. Only finished P20 and P18 in the second and third race. Not sure kind of what went wrong for Jason there. He thought maybe when the weight was gone he'd push forward. He just didn't. He stayed exactly where he was. A bit of a strange weekend. Kind of one of his weekends where he was having in the Subaru, which wasn't what expect. Maybe it's just a one-off. Going to Brand this weekend, I expect Jason with less weight. He's only P8 in the championship now, so he shed some weight that he had at Snetterton, or going into Snetterton. He should be quicker, but I just put that as a bit of an anomaly weekend for him. And Dan Lloyd did well to qualify P8 for the race and finished P7 in race 1. Kind of thought he'll do well there, but then kind of dropped to P12 in race 2 and stayed similar in race 3 and finished P13. So it was a decent start to the weekend for Dan, but unfortunately, kind of maybe race 2 or 3 looking a bit more like he had Jason's pace rather than his own pace that he had in race 1. There's obviously pace in that Vauxhall, but it seems to struggle. I'd say it probably struggles to carry the weight, but maybe a few other issues in there as well. Looking at the MB Motorsport Fords now, Jake Hill qualified P7, which was fantastic with full weight on the car, and managed to finish P9 in race 1. I think he'd lose a bit of weight for race 2 and he'd go better. Forced to drop to P24, had an issue with tyres, I believe, and got himself back up to P12 for race 3. So it was a bit of a disaster weekend for Jake when it started so well. P9 with full weight was really good, but then just didn't really. I'm not sure what happened in race 2, and that's dropped him all the way down to 5th in the championship. Still in there with a shout. I think Sutton is really trying to run away with it. It kind of is Sutton, Turkington and Ingram up at the top, and the rest of the pack trying to chase them. But I would expect Hill to be right back on it at Brands. Ollie Jackson, who always seems to be going well in Snetterton in the last few years, qualified P6, which was great. P5 in race 1. P3 in race 2, which is first podium of the season, and a DNF in race 3. Had a bit of contact, I think, which knocked him down when he looked like he was probably on for another podium as well. So good weekend for Jackson. He seems to go well. It does tend to go well at Brandt as well, so I think he'll have another good weekend there. He's got himself up to P9 in the championship now as well. It's a bit unfortunate, the DNF in race 3. If he could have picked up some small good points there, maybe top 5 or 6, he probably would have been even higher in the championship. He seems to be most on keeping up with Jake in the Ford. The other Ford are struggling a little bit, the motorbase side of the garage. I think Jackson's got it. He's just got to be careful of getting in some battles he doesn't really need to, and just keep hold of the points. And that's what the experienced drivers do, the ones that win the championship. Turkington always does that. Make sure he keeps the points, and maybe at Jackson's downfall a little bit there, getting involved in them incidents and losing any points for race 3. And on the motorbase side, or the Racing with Wearer and Photon Group Ford side of the garage, Sam Osborne qualified P14, then had a pair of P19s and a P20, so no points for him, unfortunately, for Sam. He should have been a little bit quicker to third season in the championship. Now, okay, it is the first season in the Ford, but that's a fast car. Would have expected a little bit more, unfortunately. But for him, what he's doing is getting finishes. I think his aim will be probably Jack Sears. And he's second in that now behind Dan Rowbottom. The kind of them two have run away with it now to begin with. So at least he's hoping that he knows if Rowbottom's going to win it, he needs to be the second place of the Jack Sears drivers to keep going with that and battle for that. But in the overall championship, Osborne probably does need to do a little bit more. On the other side of the garage, we had Jess Hawkins in, standing in for Andy Neat. I believe that was just the one weekend. We haven't heard that Andy, that Jess is staying in for this weekend. No confirmation that Andy's definitely back, but the assumption is that Andy will be back this weekend at Brands. Jess had a brilliant qualifying, P17. Kind of expected her to maybe push on a bit from there, but we only got two P23s and a P21 from her. So it wasn't, unfortunately, didn't get a great finish to the races, but it's more experience under her belt. I expect to see her back in a touring car again sometime, whether this season, I'm not sure, or whether she'll be looking for a full-time drive next season. But the assumption will be that Andy needs to be back this weekend. And I think for Andy, if he can have a trouble-free weekend and just get on with his racing, that'll be the best thing for him. Just get a head down, get racing, hopefully no contact and no incidents. We'll keep him under the radar. Moving on to the Team Hard Coopers now, the team I generally support, especially for first driver Jack Goff. Quite P13, so that's the highest the Cooper has qualified in its first season. Jack got a P12 and two P9s, so continuing his point scoring form from Thuxton. That's another 3 points finish, so he's had 6 points finish, 6 races. One of only 3 drivers to do that now, with Colin Turkington and Ash Sutton. Okay, he's not near battling near the front yet, but that's a Cooper that's quite comfortably battling within the top 10, especially the top 12, when it's not running quite at 100%. So when it gets to 100%, it's definitely going to be battling for podiums, I think. And this weekend at Brands could be that. We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, Jack has dropped outside top 10 in the championship, but at least that means no wait at all for the weekend. So that could be good going into qualifying. Moving on to poor Glenn Gadina, who just seems to find trouble wherever he goes. Qualified P19, didn't even get a lap in qualifying. So that's why he actually qualified behind Shedden, who was just qualified. P27 race 1, so didn't really make much ground. Race 2 had an incident with Rick Poffert, ended up retiring, but then managed to get back up to P22 in race 3. Everything seems to be going wrong for Glenn. If he can get two good practice sessions in and a good qualifying, get himself somewhere around maybe the top 15 for qualifying, I think he could be on for a strong weekend. He deserves it. He's definitely a strong point scorer, and to have no points so far is a surprise. But he just seems to have incidents following him, unfortunately. And it's just such a shame for him, because he's not that bad of a driver. And on the other side, we've got Aaron Taylor-Smith, who qualified P19, matching his Thuxton qualifying, and had a P22, a P18, and a P14. So he managed to pick up 2 points in race 3. He's kind of the second driver in Team Harden as Cooper at the moment. He's not quite on the form that Jack's got at the moment, but Aaron Taylor-Smith has been out for 3 seasons. Racing GT, so this is him coming back into it, trying to keep up and get on the pace. He is slightly ahead of Nick and Glenn. Obviously, Glenn's having too many incidents to try and compare him to anyone, but Aaron's picking up a few points where he can here and there, and I'm sure he'll be the next one pushing on. He'll be looking for definitely a top 10 finish next, I think. And I think the Coopers could go strong at Brands. I think it's a track that, if it's got a few issues, the Cooper especially seems to be straight line speed. I think it won't be so much of an issue at Brands. It seems to be very quick. If you ever watch it on the grid off the line, it seems to be super quick getting off the line, but its top speed seems to be struggling. And Nick, it's got 3 finishes, which is he's qualified P27 and finished P28 and 2 P25s. Just need to see a little bit more from Nick. I think Snetterton's probably a tough track for him. I think Brands could be a little bit better. I think he'll be looking to try and get within the top 20 and maybe even sneak a point by the end of the weekend. But he does need to try and catch up with the other guys in the team. And then finally we've got BTC Racing. So we've got Josh Cook in his Honda, only qualified P16, but did have a bit of weight and only finished P16. I thought race 2 might have picked up a bit more with losing the weight, but I still only finished P14. But then race 3 seemed to find a pace again in the Honda with P4. Suddenly flew through, went through 10 places. In the final race, the Honda as a whole just didn't seem to work as a package at Snetterton for whatever reason. Between BTC and Dynamics, they seemed to pick it up a little bit in the last race. I don't know why, whether that was tyres, but it was a struggle. So it was a surprise. It does keep Josh still on P4 in the championship though, so he's still well within the fight after 2 weekends. We had Snetterton come in this weekend for Dan Kamish. He had to carry over Kamish's weight from Thruxton, so I think it's about 30 kilograms of weight. I might be wrong on that. Only qualified P21 and I finished P18. I think maybe he's getting a bit closer. P16 race 2, which didn't get on the cusp of the points, but then only had the finished P26 in race 3. So unfortunately for Senna, it just seems like it was a. I just think he might have got a couple of points in that, but just didn't, unfortunately, at the end. I think he'll be a lot better. At least he hasn't got the weight going into qualifying at Brands. This is track he's done well at before. But I think we'll see Senna fall closer to the front this weekend. And our final driver, last but not least, we have Jade Edwards. Kind of steady little start to the weekend. Qualified P24 and had P25 and P23, race 1 and 2, and had a P15 in race 3 as their first BTCC point, which is a fantastic achievement for Jade. She breaks out half of that. She actually gained 8 places in that race as well, which is fantastic driving. Actually, it wasn't just because of instance either, did actually overtake quite a few people. So that's brilliant for her to have first point. That'll be a big confidence boost for her. And now that she has that first point, I can only see that she's going to be fighting and wanting even more to get more points in the championship. And maybe it could be this weekend at Brands. So I am going to go into my 5 drivers to watch this weekend. But first, I thought I would go through my 10 predictions for the championship so far. I said it's necessary Cooper's take at least 1 win and 5 podiums. Hasn't happened yet. It hasn't been quite as quick as we thought, but I think it is getting closer to maybe a podium soon. Maybe this weekend. Who knows? We'll see. Morgan to be the second best BMW. Not quite there yet, but he does seem to be really picking up the pace. I think he'll probably finish ahead of Elephant definitely, but he needs to just get ahead of Jelly now as well. At least one Jack Sears driver to get a podium. Robottom was so close at Thruxton, wasn't he? But it wasn't quite so close at Snetterton. Do still think that'll happen. No driver set for the BTC seat to change. Okay, Andy Neat dropped out and Jess Hawkins came in. But that was personal reasons. Andy's back this weekend, so I'm going to try and, a bit of a cheeky thing there, so that doesn't count. At least 10 drivers still have a chance of the championship when we get to the last round of the season as Brand Touch GP. I think we're still well within that. This one, I thought Jack Goff got the most poles. I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately. The Cooper just doesn't seem to be quite there yet. I was a bit optimistic with that, and it just doesn't, unfortunately, seem to be a little bit off the pace to be able to do that. Unfortunately, they did lose this one at Thruxton and said no driver will win maximum balance. That's one that's already gone, we know that. And no teams have 2 drivers on the podium. Again, gone, lost that one. No driver to finish with 0 points. That could be risky now because we got Jess Hawkins, and she is only in for 1 weekend. She didn't score points. So unfortunately, I may have lost that one, but we will wait and see. And Ash Sutton to win the most races. He's already on 2 now, with the joint most in the championship. I think it's joint, he might actually be top. Yeah, joint most with Josh Cook. And I think I'll be well on the way to win that one. So my 5 drivers to watch for Brand Tash this weekend are number 1, Jason Plato. I think he had a poor weekend at Snetterton. He'll lose some weight, so he'll be a little bit faster in qualifying. I think if he's near the front qualifying, he should be well within it for the race. And it is the last time he raced there, he got to win the final race of 2019. So I think Plato will be definitely one to watch. I think Jake Hill, who didn't have such a good weekend at Snetterton either, has dropped a bit more weight. Obviously, had maximum balance going to Snetterton. Doesn't have that now, so I think he will be a lot quicker at Brands as well. I've also gone for Jack Goff. I think this could be, if the Cooper's going to be quick anywhere, this is the shortest track of the season. Jack's had good history of this track before, and there's been quite a lot of testing for Team Hard there. It is their home track, so I think the Cooper's going to go quick anywhere. It will be there at Brands Hatch. Gordon Shedden, only 10th in the championship, but only about 9 kilograms of weight, I believe it is. I think he'll be absolutely rapid and he'll be raring to go to gain some more points. I think he's had a few incidents and things like that that's been unfortunate. They have moved further to the front. So I really think that this weekend, Gordon Shedden, I think he could be the one for pole this weekend. And the final one is Adam Morgan. Will have no weight on the car. Looked good at Brands. And I think with that pace, he's got less weight than Turkington, Sutton, Jelly, some of the other rear-wheel drive cars. He could really do well for the rear-wheel drives. I think it'll be probably... Sutton's always going to be quick, Turkington's always going to be quick, so I don't kind of want to pick them. But I think this could be one for Morgan if he can get a good qualifying, especially at the weight. He could be probably the quickest of the rear-wheel drives, particularly for the first race, until maybe Sutton in particular loses weight. I think Sutton like a pick for every race, because I think he is just going to be that Infiniti is quick. There's been talk about, is he cheating? He's not cheating, but whether it is that Infiniti got an unfair advantage, only Toko will look at that and decide. I think Ash is a great driver. He's got a car that is proving that with its quicker. Obviously, the Subaru was good in the corners, but it was just struggling for straight line speed. The Infiniti's got the straight line speed as well, so it's super quick. So they are my 5 picks for the my drivers to watch this weekend. So thank you for joining me for this video. Only a few more days till Brand is back. Super exciting, can't wait to watch it. Let's just hope for some good racing. We don't have any big incidents, no drama, and talking about just some good hard racing. And that is all for today's video. Thank you for joining me, and let's now look forward to Brands Hatch.